but the soldiers push her away, saying she is under the curse of slavery. Naofumi is forced to accept the duel to recover his friend Raphtalia. Then we see how he and Motoyasu enter the arena and attack each other. Motoyasu uses various spear skills, but the shield hero withstands his blows and counterattacks using balloons that damage Motoyasu. Then he uses his new shield abilities to pressure Motoyasu and gain the advantage in the fight. But at that moment, Melty interferes and launches a surprise attack on the shield hero, allowing Motoyasu to land a decisive blow and win the duel. The shield hero accuses Melty of intervening in the fight, but no one believes him. Story begins with Naofumi, a 20-year-old young man who lives with his parents and spends his free time reading light novels. One day, he decides to go to the library and finds a book called The 4 Sacred Weapons, which talks about 4 heroes from another world who wield a sword, spear, bow, and shield. Naofumi becomes interested in the shield hero, but when he opens the book, he sees the page is blank. Suddenly, the book shines, and Naofumi is transported to a fantasy kingdom. There, some priests tell him that he and 3 other boys have been summoned as the legendary heroes who must save the world from waves of monsters that threaten it. Naofumi realizes he is the shield hero, while the others are Ren, the sword hero, Motoyasu, the spear hero, and Itsuki, the bow hero. The priests ask them to help fight the waves, and the boys agree in exchange for a reward. The heroes are brought before the king, who explains the prophecy of the end of the world and shows them the hourglasses of the dragon era, which indicate when the next wave will come. He tells them they have less than a month to prepare and asks them to show their stats. The heroes find out that this world works like a video game. They start from 0 and must level up to become stronger. The heroes want to form a team, but the king's advisor tells them they cannot because their weapons repel each other and prevent them from leveling up. He tells them they must train separately and suggests they recruit companions for their adventures. The heroes agree and retire to rest until the next day. That night, the heroes gathered in a room to chat and realized that each of them knew a video game similar to this world, but they were different from one another. Naofumi was surprised and found out that they all came from a different Japan than his. He also realizes he is at a disadvantage because the other heroes have more experience with these types of games, while he does not. The other heroes tell him the shield hero is the weakest and that his weapon is useless. Naofumi gets angry, but calms down and thinks he must find good companions for his adventure. He cheers up and looks forward to the next day with excitement. The next day, the heroes meet with the king, who has prepared his best warriors to join them. Each warrior chooses a hero, but no one wants to go with Naofumi because word has spread that he knows nothing about this world. Naofumi finds out that their conversation from the previous night was spied on and worries because he won't be able to level up alone. But then, a girl from Motoyasu's group named Malty offers to go with him. Naofumi is glad and accepts her as his companion. The king gives the heroes money for their journey and gives more to Naofumi since he has fewer people on his team. The heroes say goodbye and wish Naofumi good luck. Malty suggests to Naofumi that she show him around the capital so he can get used to this world. Naofumi agrees and decides to go to a weapons and equipment shop. Malty takes him to a man named Edward who has that kind of shop. In the shop, Edward recognizes Naofumi as the shield hero and tells him he's had bad luck. Naofumi doesn't let his words affect him and asks Edward to show him a weapon he can use. Edward shows him these swords made of different materials, but when Naofumi tries to take one, the shield prevents him. Naofumi realizes he can only use the shield as a weapon and will have to fight only with it. Edward asks if he can remove the shield, but Naofumi says he can't. He can only move it around. Naofumi decides to only buy some adventurer's gear, and then Malty tells him it's time to level up. They both leave the capital to gain experience. Outside the capital, Naofumi encounters some low-level balloons, which attack him without hesitation. But the balloons can't hurt Naofumi thanks to his shield, so Naofumi takes his time defeating them with his fists. After several hours, Naofumi uses a shield skill to absorb the defeated balloons and gain new skills. Malty then suggests Naofumi buy equipment for her so they can fight stronger monsters. Naofumi agrees, and they return to Edward's shop. At the shop, Naofumi negotiates a discount, impressing Edward with his bargaining skill. Malty chooses expensive equipment and demands Naofumi pay for it, claiming they can easily recover the money. Reluctantly, Naofumi pays for everything. He then asks Edward where to sell balloon remnants. Edward directs him to a monster materials shop where Naofumi recovers some lost money. That night, Naofumi dines with Malty and plans the next day's activities. Malty proposes toasting together, but Naofumi declines as he doesn't drink. Malty insists, but the shield hero refuses again. Malty reveals that in this country, women are superior, so men don't refuse drinks from women. Surprised by the custom, Naofumi decides to sleep. He thanks Malty for joining his team before leaving. The next day, the shield hero finds his money and armor stolen. He searches frantically, then goes to tell Malty. Instead, he is apprehended by soldiers and taken to the castle on the king's orders. There, Malty falsely accuses Naofumi of drunkenly assaulting her, claiming she escaped and asked Motoyasu for help. Shocked and bewildered, Naofumi desperately proclaims his innocence but is silenced by the king. Seeing Malty mock him secretly, Naofumi realizes she betrayed him. He begs to be sent home and replaced, but the king refuses, saying heroes can only be replaced upon death. For his alleged crime, the king decrees Naofumi will be hated by all. Crestfallen, the hero decides to continue alone, having lost everything due to Malty's betrayal. Once outside, Naofumi receives contemptuous looks from all the citizens. Edward stops him and tries to hit him for what he supposedly did to Malty. But upon seeing his gaze, he realizes he is innocent and decides to help him by giving him new clothes. Naofumi thanks him and promises to repay him someday. Then he heads to the outskirts of the capital, where he fights several balloons and manages to level up to 2, and with the money he earns, he pays Edward. At dinner time, 3 adventurers interrupt him and follow him out of the tavern to try to rob him. The hero defends himself, but realizes he lacks offensive strength. Then a guy named Bellucas appears, who makes him an offer when he sees that he needs a partner. He takes him to his warehouse and reveals that he is a slave trader, and that the slaves have a curse that prevents them from disobeying their master. Bellucas recommends a powerful beast level 75, but tells him it costs 15 gold coins, more than he can afford. Naofumi says he wants a cheap and obedient one, so Bellucas tells him he will have to buy a demi-human, but they are not good for combat and he will have to train them. That's where he takes an interest in Raftalia, a little slave girl. Bellucas thinks she won't live very long, but Naofumi decides to buy her. Then he takes Raftalia to Edward, whom he asks to sell him a new weapon and clothes. Raftalia asks Naofumi who he is. He tells her that he is the shield hero. Upon hearing this, Raftalia remembers her parents' words, who had told her that the shield hero was kind and valued demi-humans. Raftalia feels happy to have met the shield hero in person. The hero gives her medicine he created with his new healing skill and heals Raftalia's wounds. Afterward, we see the girl sleeping, but she has a dream in which she remembers the first wave of destruction. She tries to escape from the monsters with her parents, but they are cornered by an enormous creature. Her parents sacrifice themselves to save her. Upon waking up, Raftalia is very upset, but the hero reassures her that she is safe. The next day, Naofumi sells the medicine he made the day before and earns some money. Then he meets her, looking at some children playing with a ball. He asks her if she wants one, but she says no. However, he notices that she is lying and buys her a ball. He tells her they can play with it when they finish working, so Raftalia is very happy. Raftalia and the shield hero arrived at a new town. After selling the skin of a rabbit for 2 silver coins, the hero asked the vendor if there was any place where he could easily make money. The vendor told him about a nearby mine that contained valuable minerals but was infested with a dangerous first-wave monster. Determined to explore the mine and collect the minerals, the hero first experimented with his new skills and created a rope shield and an air shield. Then, He and Raftalia entered the dark mine together, finding several precious stones along the way. Suddenly, they stumbled upon the monster, similar to the one that had killed Raftalia's parents years earlier. Paralyzed by fear, Raftalia was unable to move. The hero embraced her, and together they managed to escape unharmed. Once safe, Raftalia told the hero about her tragic past. He advised her to face her fears and become stronger to prevent other children from suffering like her. When the monster found them again, the hero stood between the beast and Raftalia, urging her to take the opportunity to kill it. But fear and the curse of being a slave paralyzed her. The hero told her to flee while he contained the monster, but Raftalia realized that if she did, the hero would die like her parents. Remembering their days together, Raftalia regained the will to fight. She attacked the beast with her sword, while the hero restrained it with his shield. Together they defeated it, gaining valuable experience. Raftalia hugged the hero, relieved that they had survived. A week later, the hero and Raftalia were training in the field, easily catching and eliminating the monsters. Raftalia had grown and her personality changed. They went to see Edward, the blacksmith, to commission armor for the hero since his clothes did not protect him enough. Edward offered him one of his best armors, but the hero found it too heavy. Instead, Edward agreed to make one custom-fitted. The next day, the hero received the armor made by Edward, called Armor of the Savages. Raftalia was amazed at how cool he looked in it. Then they saw several soldiers patrolling, ready for the next wave. The hero commented that it would be easier if he knew when it would arrive. Hearing this, a villager told him about the hourglass at the kingdom's church, which announced the wave. The hero decided to visit it, discovering that it reacted to his shield and allowed him to see the remaining time. Suddenly, Motoyasu appears with his allies, and upon seeing that Melty is there, the protagonist gets upset and decides to leave. But before leaving, Motoyasu asks Raftalia if she has heard the rumors about Naofumi, which leaves her confused. However, the shield hero decides to take Raftalia with him, and they meet Ren and Itsuki, who ask him not to interfere during the wave. Then, at night, Raftalia asks our hero if something happened between him and the other heroes, to which he responds that she doesn't need to know that, so Raftalia decides not to keep pressing him. The next day, the warriors prepare for the wave, and Raftalia tells Naofumi that she is glad to have met him since he has done a lot for her and sincerely thanks him. Then, she also tells him that she will be his sword and will follow him anywhere. After this, the time comes and the wave of destruction hits the kingdom. The heroes and their allies are transported to the battlefield, where they see several monsters appear. Our hero decides to go defeat them, but Raftalia realizes that the Ryut village is being attacked. So the two decide to go to protect the villagers. Once there, Naofumi orders Raftalia to evacuate the villagers, while he distracts the monsters. He defends several villagers and attracts the monsters to a large tower, which he climbs up a ladder. Once at the top, he rings a bell to get the attention of all the monsters, who start climbing the tower to kill him. But the hero throws gasoline all over the tower and causes a fire. Then he escapes from the tower using his rope shield, with which he defeats several monsters. The villagers regain their will to fight when they see the hero and try to help him, but a huge monster appears that threatens to crush them. The hero intervenes to defend and protect them and asks the villagers to step back, since they will not be able to defeat the monster. Then Raftalia appears to help Naofumi, and together they defeat all the enemies by fighting as a team. The other heroes face off against the most powerful enemy of the Calamity Wave, whom they manage to defeat with a great combination of attacks. With this, the wave dissipates, and the townspeople thank Naofumi for having saved them. Raftalia tells the shield hero that thanks to him, many people will not have to suffer as she suffered, and expresses her admiration for his bravery during the battle, which brings tears to her eyes. At night, the king offers a banquet to the four heroes, but Naofumi only goes to collect his reward. However, Raftalia surprises him and accompanies him to try the celebration food, making him feel accompanied. But then, Motoyasu approaches and challenges him to a duel as he has heard that Raphtalia is his slave and wants to free her. The shield hero responds that in this world slavery is legal and he doesn't have to accept his challenge. Motoyasu insists and tells him a hero shouldn't have slaves, and that's why he must face him. He gets angry and is about to leave, but the kingdom's soldiers stop him on the king's orders, who decides the duel will take place. Raphtalia tries to intervene and say the duel is unnecessary, but the soldiers push her away, saying she is under the curse of slavery. Now Fumi is forced to accept the duel to recover his friend Raphtalia. Then we see how he and Motoyasu enter the arena and attack each other. Motoyasu uses various spear skills, but the shield hero withstands his blows and counterattacks using balloons that damage Motoyasu. Then he uses his new shield abilities to pressure Motoyasu and gain the advantage in the fight. But at that moment, Melty interferes and launches a surprise attack on the shield hero, allowing Motoyasu to land a decisive blow and win the duel. The shield hero accuses Melty of intervening in the fight, but no one believes him. Then the king removes Raphtalia's slavery curse, and we find out Melty is the king's daughter, and that's why the king does everything she wants. This makes now Fumi feel desperate. Suddenly, Ren and Itsuki interrupt Motoyasu's victory, revealing that they saw Melty's actions. This proves that Motoyasu actually lost, allowing Naofumi to rescue his friend. She pledges to always be with him and never abandon him. Subsequently, the king summons all the heroes, rewarding everyone except Naofumi. Itsuki and Ren decide to back him, as they recognize his heroism in saving the village during a crisis and believe he deserves to be rewarded. Under pressure, the king grants Naofumi the smallest prize. Later, Naofumi and Raphtalia visit Balukas. Despite Naofumi's disapproval, Raphtalia wishes to again take on the stigma of slavery as a sign of loyalty. Balukas suggests that Naofumi buy an egg of a creature that might become a dragon. After purchasing the egg, Naofumi visits a sorceress who, grateful for saving her kingdom, gifts him a grimoire so that he and Raphtalia can learn magic. After a night in the village, the egg hatches, revealing a creature that Naofumi names Philo. Its rapid growth amazes both. Suddenly, Melty and Motoyasu show up, proclaiming that the king has granted them control of the village and they impose high taxes. The villagers rebel, and when Melty threatens to suppress the dissenters, a royal messenger appears. Naofumi is challenged to a duel for the control of the village, a 3-lap race riding Philo against Motoyasu and his dragon. Despite attempts at cheating, Naofumi reaches the finish line first and discovers that Philo has grown even more. The governor presents him with a carriage and a permit to enter villages without paying. Their journey continues, and at the dawn of the following day, Philo has transformed into a small girl. It is revealed that she is an aspirant to the royalty of her species, thus explaining her exceptionality. Our hero, Naofumi, heads to see Edward get clothes for Philo. It turns out that every time Philo transforms, she ruins her clothes, so she needs a special outfit. Edward suggests they visit the capital's seamstress. However, once there, the seamstress informs them that they will need a magical thread produced from a magical stone, a difficult item to obtain. With this new goal, Naofumi decides to trade products in various towns. On their journey, the group stumbles upon a man in trouble who needs to deliver medicine to his village. Naofumi agrees to help him in exchange for some favor. They decide to transport the man to his village on Philo's back, which allows them to get there quickly. Once there, Naofumi delivers the medicine to the man's mother, whose health significantly improves. As a thank you, the man provides them with a bag full of vegetables. Naofumi understands Philo's potential to transport people and goods during emergencies. With this in mind, they decide to start offering transport services, which helps them accumulate money. On their way, they encounter a chimera. Through teamwork, they manage to defeat the creature and acquire the coveted magic stone. With this stone, they can finally obtain the magic thread for Philo's clothes. Grateful, Philo expresses her gratitude to Naofumi. After their previous adventure, the shield hero and his companions head towards a village in the south. Their mission is to transport a special product designed to eliminate invasive plants that are causing diseases among the inhabitants. Upon arrival in the village, they are greeted by the governor, who explains the disastrous situation caused by the plants. The governor pleads for Naofumi's help, whom he calls the Holy Bird God. Naofumi gets to work and begins to heal the villagers with his magic, receiving gratitude from everyone. However, before they can leave, the governor asks them to save the village from the invasive plants. He reveals that they were previously dying of hunger until Motoyasu brought a special seed that grew to provide enough food for everyone. Unfortunately, the seed grew uncontrollably, covering the entire village and affecting its inhabitants. Naofumi commits to solving the problem Motoyasu caused, but asks for a reward in return. Upon leaving the village, the group faces the monstrous plants. After a hard fight, they manage to locate the seed. Joining forces, and with Naofumi using the product along with the power of his shield, they manage to eliminate the threat to the village. In addition, Naofumi modifies the seed so that it can continue providing food to the villagers without being a danger in the future. The entire village thanks Naofumi for his help. Naofumi and his companions arrived at a small village in the mountains. Upon entering, they noticed the villagers looked ill and weak. They asked what was going on, and the villagers explained that a month ago, the hero Ren had killed an ancient dragon that lived in the nearby mountains. However, the corpse of the dragon had rotted and was releasing poisonous toxins into the air, which reached the village and caused an epidemic. Naofumi realized that Ren's negligence was the cause of these people's suffering. Raphtalia asked why no one had done something about it if they knew the origin of the problem. The villagers responded that they tried to ask for help, but since the dragon's death, the mountain had become uninhabitable. Violent, unknown monsters now wandered the area, making it too dangerous for anyone to venture there. Naofumi questioned the village doctors, who confirmed they had requested assistance from the royal government, but help would take time to arrive. Seeing an opportunity, Naofumi offered to save the village himself in exchange for 500 silver coins, the same amount the government would charge. The doctors were surprised but accepted the deal. Thus, Naofumi, Raphtalia, and Philo headed to the mountain, willing to face any danger in order to obtain the reward and save the sick villagers. Using their skills, they managed to get past the monsters and reach the putrid, rotting corpse of the dragon. But just as they were trying to clean the area, the dragon came to life as a ghastly zombie. Raphtalia began feeling sick from the toxin, but insisted on staying to fight. Philo viciously attacked the dragon as she hated dragons. Naofumi did his best to protect his companions as he considered whether they should retreat or keep fighting against this dragon. While Philo fiercely battled the zombie dragon, it opened its jaw and swallowed her in one gulp. Naofumi was horrified by this sight, recalling all the moments he had shared with the young Philolial. Believing his companion was dead, uncontrollable anger overcame him. Suddenly, his shield glowed intensely and transformed into the shield of rage, granting him overwhelming power but clouding his judgment. Naofumi began attacking the dragon with all his fury, launching devastating flames from his shield. Raphtalia watched worriedly as her companion lost control, so she ran to stop him before it was too late. Upon feeling Raphtalia's touch, Naofumi regained consciousness, but he was horrified to see the precarious state she was in due to the dragon's toxin. He quickly used his healing magic to aid his weakened friend. The dragon attempted to attack them again, but Naofumi blocked it with his shield. He realized that without the power of the Shield of Rage, he couldn't win this battle, but he feared being consumed by rage and madness again. At that moment, the zombie collapsed, defeated. To Naofumi's surprise, Philo emerged unscathed from the remains of the dragon. She explained that she had eaten the purple crystal core that kept the monster alive. Together, they disposed of the putrefied corpse, cleaning the air of toxins and saving the village. Back in the village, Naofumi initially refused the reward, asking the doctor to use the money to heal Raphtalia. But the doctor warned him that she was suffering from a powerful ancient curse, for which a very special holy water was required. So now Fumi accepted the payment and set off with his companions towards the city, in search of a church where they could find a cure for Raphtalia. Before they left, Philo handed Naofumi a fragment of the dragon's crystal, which was absorbed by his legendary shield. This unlocked a mysterious new ability that Naofumi couldn't yet utilize due to his current low level, but he was determined to discover the hidden power in this strange crystal. Then the next day, we see the group returning from an errand. Naofumi, our protagonist, informs Raphtalia that he plans to return to the capital the following day to get the sacred water he needs to heal her. In the middle of their conversation, they meet a girl named Malti, who seems to recognize Philo. Philo and Malti start to play, so Naofumi and Raphtalia decide to move on to the village. By night, Philo returns and asks Naofumi to accompany her to the capital. It turns out that Malti had strayed from her escorts while playing in the area. Naofumi decides to agree, knowing that Malti is of royal blood and there could be a significant reward. Once in the capital, Malti thanks Naofumi and asks Philo to accompany her to claim the reward. Meanwhile, Naofumi and Raphtalia plan to visit the church. Upon arrival, Naofumi realizes that only 3 heroes are being honored. However, he decides to enter, where he is greeted by the archbishop, who congratulates him on his duel against Motoyasu. Naofumi ignores him and requests the high-quality sacred water, paying a gold coin for it. Upon leaving the church, they encounter a young soldier named Ake, who is looking for Naofumi. Naofumi, thinking he's in trouble, decides to move away with Raphtalia. But when alone, he is attacked by Motoyasu, who is annoyed with him and demands that he release Philo, believing she is one of his slaves. Their confrontation causes great damage to the city. Ake appears to intervene and declares the authority for Motoyasu and Naofumi to fight. But Melty steps in, revealing that she is Main's younger sister and the heir to the throne. Everyone is forced to obey her orders. Motoyasu encounters Philo, whom he tells to stay away from Naofumi. However, Philo shows her true form and kicks him. Later, Melty meets alone with Naofumi and the others, trying to have a conversation with him. However, Naofumi tells her he has nothing to discuss with her and asks her to leave. Despite this, Melty insists. But at that moment, the royal escorts come looking for her. Upon hearing that the king is calling her, she is obliged to withdraw. The girls ask Naofumi why he didn't want to talk to Melty, but he ignores the question. Instead, he asks Philo not to meet with Malti again, which confuses and saddens Philo. After a while, Philo decides to go out for some fresh air. Meanwhile, Naofumi reflects on the bad experiences he's had with royalty, concluding that he can't trust them. After a while, we see Philo returning to Edward's shop, ending this tumultuous day. And there, she informs the protagonist of the visit. We see Akka appear with other soldiers, and upon seeing him, the protagonist asks what he wants from him. Ake responds, asking to be allowed to fight alongside him in the next wave. They were impressed by how the protagonist fought in the previous battle. The protagonist tells them that if they want to fight in the wave, they don't need to join him. However, Ake mentions that they want to fight at his side since all the soldiers present are from Ryuta, a village the protagonist saved during the first wave. This is the reason they want to thank him. At that moment, Naofumi asks them for 15 silver coins. He tells them that if they give him that amount, he will accept them into the group. The others are surprised, but decide to gather 150 silver coins. With this money, the hero decides to upgrade his armor with Edward. However, Edward notices that a star has appeared upon reaching level 40. Edward explains that upon reaching this level, he must do a class upgrade. If he doesn't, he won't be able to advance further as he has reached the growth limit. He tells him that the class upgrade is done with the church's hourglass. Therefore, they decide to go there. On the way, Naofumi asks Raphtalia what class upgrade she wants. She replies that he can choose for her, but he insists that she should decide her potential by herself. When the waves are over, he will return to his world. Therefore, Raphtalia must choose a class that allows her to live alone. Upon hearing this, Raphtalia worries because she does not want the protagonist to leave her world. They finally arrive at the hourglass and discover that they must pay 15 gold coins for each class upgrade. Despite the surprise, the protagonist decides to pay for the class upgrade. He gives her 15 gold coins, but at that moment they are stopped by a nun. The nun mentions that the Shield Heroes group is prohibited from upgrading because this was declared by the king himself. Now Fumi is forced to withdraw with his money. Later, he visits Bellucas and asks if there is any way to upgrade. He remembers that Bellucas has a level 75 slave. Bellucas responds that he can't help him, but suggests he can upgrade at the hourglass of another kingdom. He recommends 3 kingdoms to do it, but it would take too much time to get to any of them, which is impossible as the 3rd wave is coming soon. So Nafumi decides to discard this idea for now. Then, Bellucas recommends him some flying dragon claws for Philo, which will increase her strength during combat. The protagonist decides to buy them. After this, he gets a request from Bellucas to test Philo's claws, so they head to hunt a monster that is in the sewers. Once there, they start to fight together. Philo defeats the monster with her new gear, which fills her with joy. Later at night, the protagonist puts bandages soaked in holy water on Raphtalia to help her heal from the dragon's curse as quickly as possible. Raphtalia asks him if she can accompany him to his world when everything is over, which surprises the protagonist. But before Raphtalia can say anything else, Philo interrupts the conversation, so the protagonist decides to end the chat. Finally, we see that they travel to a northern village to complete a task. Once there, they find villagers in deplorable conditions. It's revealed that Itsuki, with his group of rebels, caused a revolution to overthrow a corrupt governor in the village. However, when the rebels took control, the situation in the village worsened. The protagonist decides to help, and after doing so, returns to the capital with his companions. In the capital, they find Ren and Itsuki, who mention that someone else has claimed the rewards of their missions. At this, the protagonist laughs at them. He takes the opportunity to tell them about the rebels and the dragon's corpse, realizing that because of them, many people have died. Izuku, however, chooses not to believe him and leaves the tavern. The protagonist receives a new armor from Edgar, which contains a dragon core. At that moment, his companions appear with 150 silver coins. They decide to hand them over, but the protagonist suggests they use the money to upgrade their equipment. They accept his proposal, which makes them happy. However, he warns them that if they betray him, they will pay a very high price. Everyone agrees, and they begin to prepare for the next wave. The protagonist gives a new accessory to Raphtalia and Philo to increase their statistics. Then they are transported to the wave zone, where they start to fight against the monsters that appear. At that moment, the protagonist encounters an old woman he had previously healed, who proves to be a formidable warrior. She commits to fighting the monsters in the area along with Aki and the others, allowing the protagonist to join the other heroes to fight against the boss of the wave. There, he finds a huge floating ship where other heroes are fighting against powerful monsters. Ren and Itsuki have difficulty working as a team, so the protagonist advises them that they must join together to survive. He notices that the monsters have a strange shadow and orders Raphtalia to use light magic. By doing so, they discover that the monsters' weak point is in their shadows, and they all start to attack them, managing to defeat the monsters. At that moment, the boss of the wave, Soul Eater, appears. All the heroes try to damage him with electric magic, but the Soul Eater resists their attacks. Then, the protagonist asks Philo to use wind magic. By doing so, he manages to wound the Soul Eater, enraging him and causing a counterattack towards the heroes. However, thanks to the protagonist's legendary shield, they manage to stay on their feet. In a desperate attempt, the protagonist decides to use a shield of rage to defeat the Soul Eater. By doing so, he awakens a new power thanks to the dragon fragment in his armor. At the same time, Philo transforms after consuming a purple crystal. This change gives them an advantage in the battle. And at that moment, the protagonist uses his new ability called Iron Maiden, with which he traps the Soul Eater in a prison of shields and then uses his magic to finish off the Soul Eater once and for all. Seeing this, the other heroes are astounded by the protagonist's power. After a while, we see that the wave has not yet disappeared, and at that moment, a mysterious girl named Glass appears, who recognizes the protagonist as the only hero of the kingdom. Then she presents herself as his enemy, and at that moment, Vlad decides to fight against the protagonist. She tells him that now the real battle of the waves begins. At that moment, we see how the three heroes try to attack Glass. However, she stops their attacks with ease. After this, Glass uses an ability that knocks the three heroes out of the fight, leaving only the protagonist and the girls standing. Then, he begins to fight against Glass alongside Raftalia and Philo. However, Glass proves to be far superior, causing Raftalia to fall to the ground defeated. At this point, the protagonist decides to activate his Shield of Rage. Philo rises and attacks Glass with the power of the Dragon Crystal, but Glass defends herself and knocks her out of the fight again. Then, she uses a special attack against the protagonist, to which Glass congratulates the protagonist for having endured her attack. In response, the protagonist decides to use the Iron Maiden, but when he encloses Glass, she destroys the maiden with great ease. The protagonist decides to devise a strategy to escape with the girls, and we see how Glass decides to allow them to flee as the time of the waves has ended. There, she tells the protagonist that he won't be saved next time. After this, we see how the wave ends, leading the protagonist to wonder what the waves are. But at that moment, a soldier appears asking him to present himself to the king. After this, the protagonist meets with the king, who asks him where he got so much power to defeat a boss alone. To this, the protagonist responds by telling him that if he wants to know, he must kneel before him. This causes the king to get angry with Naofumi. However, he tells him that he now has the strength to easily end the king. And there, the king tells him that Raftalia and Philo will pay for his lack of respect. But Naofumi threatens him, saying that if he does something to them, he will kill him. Therefore, the king is forced to remain silent. After this, the shield hero meets up with the girls at Edward's shop as he must prepare to travel to another kingdom and level up. After this, the group embarks on their new journey, where we see how Edward left several accessories as gifts for everyone, which will help them advance more efficiently. After this, the boys decide to rest, but at that moment Melty appears with several royal soldiers, and she asks the protagonist to return to reconcile with the king, to which he refuses. At that moment, the protagonist notices how a soldier tries to kill Melty, so he decides to protect her, and it is revealed that everything is a conspiracy made by Melty's sister, so that everyone thinks Naofumi has taken Melty hostage, since Melty plans to take the throne by killing Melty using a false story. In response, the protagonist decides to protect Melty, and after this, we see how the entire kingdom shows a new video where it is shown how the protagonist and the girls kill Melty's escorts to kidnap the princess, which causes the boys to now be wanted throughout the kingdom.